Just to those in attendance, we'll get started in just a minute or two. Grace. Okay, we'll get started some of the earlier items, which is just procedural. Any disclosure? Yeah. Yeah, the disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. All right, seeing none. Consent item for private street name 130 Otterbein Road. Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Schneider. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. So we'll move on to, for the delegations, a quick note. For the delegations who have registered for the meeting this date, while public participation is welcome at meetings, we are committed to engaging in a respectful and constructive dialogue with members of the community, and conducting yourself in any of the following manners may result in an immediate removal from the meeting, which is interrupting councillors, staff, and other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, and hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations, please do not take offense if following your presentations there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. And discussion items, we'll start with 5.1, and that's a corporate climate action plan. Anna Marie Caprini, I believe. Okay, Anna, you're presenting first, so whenever you're ready, go right ahead.
Good evening. Happy Earth Day. Tonight we'll be walking through a body of work called our Corporate Climate Action Plan, which we call, in a friendly way, CORCAP 2.0. So this body of work has 3 parts to it, and tonight we'll run through this together. I'll describe an overview of municipal climate action, then give you a progress update on our 2023 GHG reductions, and then I will introduce Pivot Net Zero. So CORCAP 2.0 is a large body of work. The first part focuses on our corporate emissions. And so tonight I will usher for you our 2nd generation corporate climate action plan that's called Pivot Net Zero. The second part of this body of work you may be quite familiar with. The first body of work, Kate Daly is leading, and you will hear an update from her in May on the Kitchener Utilities Clean Energy Transition Strategy. Then in June, you will have an update from Climate Action Waterloo Region on our Transform WR, which is our Community Climate Action Plan. Part 3 of this body of work in terms of our Corporate Climate Action Plan is starting anew and beginning soon. And our Community Climate Adaptation Plan was approved, and new modeling was completed in 22. And so we'll talk a bit about that tonight as well. So that we're all kind of on the same page when we speak of climate change. We talk about fossil fuels and our energy use because what we understand is that through fossil fuel use, when we burn fossil fuels, those emit greenhouse gas emissions. In turn, those greenhouse gas emissions blanket the Earth, preventing the radiant heat from the sun from escaping from the Earth. And so in a sense, the planet is warming up. And so this is how we come to climate change and how in particular we speak of an energy transition. So we recognize that municipalities have direct and indirect influence and control over greenhouse gas emissions in our community. In Transform WR, that body of work looks at specifically community emissions. Tonight's focus will very much be on our corporate emissions, those emissions that we emit through delivering service to the community. And so that will be our focus in Pivot Net Zero and our focus tonight. I'd mentioned that there was more recent modeling about our community's impacts and what we will be seeing in terms of our climate changes. What we understand is that our community will be warmer, wetter, and wilder. I'd like to take us down the path of warmer just a bit. If business as usual continues, the modeling is indicating that we will see a 5-degree increase from pre-industrial temperatures. We are currently at a 1.1 degree increase from our pre-industrial temperatures. We are working to not increase those temperatures to 2 degrees. We understand that once we hit 2 degrees, we are likely to see the worst impacts of climate change. So, we are seeing rising temperatures. We are anticipating more days above 30 degrees. We are also anticipating that overnight temperatures will not be dropping the way we have become accustomed to. And at the other end of the thermometer, we also don't anticipate seeing many days below -15. So let's look at that briefly. What does that mean? We deliver, for instance, ice to the community, both indoor and outdoor ice rinks. That service delivery will become more difficult to do so in these conditions. It will also become more costly. What Pivot Net Zero is doing and hopes to do through this body of work with your support tonight is to future-proof that kind of service delivery to our community. And that's what we'll be discussing a bit more tonight. So I'd like now to begin to look back at how we are doing in terms of our greenhouse gas emissions. And I'd like to bring us to the most recent year of data that we have, to 2023. We currently have a 2016 baseline, and we also have an endorsed 8% reduction from our 2016 baseline. What we are seeing in 2023 is a 5% decrease in our corporate greenhouse gas emissions from that baseline. Now, are those emissions, is that a sustained reduction? We're uncertain. What we do see is 2 particularly promising trends. First of all, our streetlights. We have made significant investment in our streetlights, and it is paying off very much in terms of the GHG reductions and cost savings for energy. So we're seeing about a 70% reduction. We anticipate that GHG and energy consumption will be sustained. Likewise, we've seen growth as a community in our service delivery, and we are beginning to see a decoupling of that growth from GHG emissions. So, for example, we've increased our square footage in our facilities, and we've also increased in our fleet to deliver service across our community. We've seen a 20% increase in our fleet contingency, but we're not seeing a commensurate increase in GHG emissions. Pivot Net Zero is seeking to position our organization so that will continue to be sustained reductions. So let's look at our organization. In terms of facilities and fleet, they contribute 90% of our corporate emissions. Not all fuel types are created equally in terms of greenhouse gas intensity. So when we look back at 2023 in terms of how much energy we have used, 43% of our energy came from natural gas. And by extension, our greenhouse gas emissions, they accounted for 65% of our emissions. Similarly, we relied on electricity at 46% of all the energy we used last year, which contributed 22% of our greenhouse gas emissions. When we look at our fleet, we use a variety of different types of fossil fuels and different fuels. 2/3 of our emissions in fleet are coming from medium and heavy-duty vehicles. When we look at facilities, we typically mostly rely on 2 fuel types. 80% of the natural gas that we have consumed in our facilities is to heat space. When we look at facilities a little more closely, 2/3 of our emissions have come from 3 facility types. These 3 that you see here: arenas, administrative buildings, and pools. It is from this information that I've shared with you now that we are beginning to build out and what I share with you tonight about Pivot Net Zero. One of the cautions I have for you, sometimes when you hear the term net zero, you may think, ooh, aspirational, visionary. I want to assure you that the plan that is before you tonight is very practical and a very executable plan. It is very foundational, the actions that are listed, to developing a roadmap that will align a new target of net zero with multiple priorities across the organization, such as deferred maintenance, asset renewal, accessibility, and capital planning. The actions that are listed are really to streamline a very strategic approach to net zero. So let's look at the plan that's before you tonight. We continue with a 2026 8% reduction target being in place. The priority focus is really in facilities and fleet, and we focus in 3 pathways: energy conservation, fuel switching, and generating renewable energy. We seek tonight a support for a new 2050 target for our organization of net zero. What that means for us right now is that in our decision making, we focus on reducing corporate GHG emissions to as close to zero as possible. The plan runs from 2024 to 2027, and there are 47 actions that are listed in Appendix B. We commit to reporting yearly on Earth Day on approximately 18 indicators. And you are getting a sense already of what net zero looks like in decision making as you have received and endorsed the work for Schlegel Park. So financing this body of work, we know that it's going to be a significant capital investment in order to make progress. We look at approximately a very rough order of magnitude of $10 million a year over 25 years. We know that there are many technological solutions yet to come, and many for which we have already deployed across the organization and are continuing to do. And this effort is showing dividends in terms of affordability. Last year, in 2023, we spent $7.5 million on energy costs. In 2019, Council endorsed the first generation Corporate Climate Action Plan. Since that time, if we look at our facilities, for instance, we have, across the organization, made energy efficiency efforts. What we're seeing is a decrease in energy costs per meter squared and a decrease in the energy demand per square meter across our facilities. We are seeing a 13% reduction in energy costs per square meter due to those energy efficiency efforts. We know that this work needs to be done at scale across our organization and across municipalities across Canada. We anticipate that we need to, as we have with the Energy Reserve Fund, to look at expanding internal funding opportunities, to continue to seek grants to support the work, and to continue the advocacy that you have and will continue to do. These are the recommendations before you tonight, and before I open the floor to discussion, I just wanted to introduce the staff team that is with us. So we have Hillary. Hillary is our sustainability advisor. Beside her is Luke Reeser-Keller, and he is our PM for energy management. We have Darren Becks, who is our Director of Facilities Management, and Matthew Lynch, who is our Director of Fleet. This is the team that has helped to bring forward the second generation Corporate Climate Action Plan, very much built from the data that we do have access to in trying to serve the needs that we have as an organization and future-proofing our service delivery to the community.
Is that done?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will see if there's any questions from the committee. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the report. So I noticed in the report it says that as far as embodied carbon, that's not something that we're looking at right now. You know, we've got all these new community centers and facilities that we're building, and
Yep.
I mean, there are going to be massive greenhouse gas emissions coming from the manufacturing of those materials and the transportation of those materials,
Yep.
et cetera, right?
Yeah, so embodied carbon is an important factor in any organization's building. Where this really focuses this body of work is very much on those things that we can control in terms of GHG emissions. Embodied carbon is important, and I think where we will see it, we may see it in the next generation plan. Could be a good place for it. Where we also need to consider embodied carbon is when we make the decision to build new. It's a very important consideration in terms of the materials we use. Some of what will speak to that is one of the projects that will be our green building standard that will come in, and it will speak to some of that. And some of it is a procurement play. The biggest impact on embodied carbon is going to be in that chain that we don't control in procurement. And so we anticipate there will be changes in the industries that will impact how carbon intense our product and our buildings are, for instance, but it isn't something we have as much direct control and influence over. And so that's why this plan has not prioritized embodied carbon at this time, but it may be something, as I say, a future consideration for 2027 and beyond.
Right. And maybe just a more general question. When, the federal government comes out with its targets, et cetera, do they look at embodied carbon as in part of the calculation?
Sure, I think, so where we will report on embodied carbon in the future is when we build new, we are committing that we will report yearly on any new builds what the embodied carbon is, and we also commit to asking that of any consultants that work with us on a new build. For the feds, they may include it in some of their GHG reporting, but it will most likely be captured in other departments other than those specifically focused on GHG reductions nationally.
So are you saying that when we look at the Mill Cortland development, the new sports complex, Williamsburg Community Centre, et cetera, we will be taking embodied carbon into account?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay, good,
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Yeah, and so across facilities management, that is something that as a project team, we are committing to, asking for when we have an RFP going out, and we have seen that as we have built out the Schlegel Park example. And so I do think that that's an appropriate time, an appropriate place and scope to be asking about embodied carbon, because it is the place that we can most readily control, in particular in a new build situation.
Okay, thank you. I also noticed that nowhere in the report do you refer to geothermal energy. You mentioned solar and perhaps bioenergy, I'm not sure, but nowhere does it mention geothermal. Is there a reason for that?
No, I think where geothermal and any, in a sense, renewable energy practices, they will begin to be captured in the green building standard that will come forward. And so that will be the best place. That will set a bar for the organization to be vetting the best energy sources on a project-by-project basis. What is ready to move, in a sense, is a solar strategy. That is included as a specific action. It's the renewable energy that's, in a sense, most robust and mature and ready to move. But that's not to say that geothermal will not be a part of any body of this work. It is one of those, in a sense, renewable energies and efficient energy sources that is definitely on our radar.
Right, okay, good. The last question I have, can I ask one more? Is my time up? I'll make it quick. Okay, so according to the report, in the last 7 years, we reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 5%. And we're proposing to reduce it by another 3% over the next 3 years. I mean, we're actually falling behind what we've already accomplished. If you think about, how much we should be reducing our emissions by. Do you think, what are the chances of meeting our goals long term at this rate?
I feel confident that if we bring forward the actions that are within Pivot Net Zero, that we will be very well positioning our organization to make progress and to demonstrate that progress. So that 5% that we're seeing in 2023, the question is that sustained? That's going to be on how we deliver service to the community and how much progress we are making and commitment we're making, decision making to those 3 pathways. Right. But it's doable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, open up for comments. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Singh, and thank you for bringing back this report to us. Climate change has a real impact financially on communities. I have right in front of me the climate clock. So we have 5 years, 90 days, 16 hours, 21 minutes, and 24 seconds to reverse or to change the global warming to 1.5 increasing by 1.5. And so, I think in the end, it's going to cost us a little bit more. And I think, we need to be cognizant of that. But at the end, the goal, you can't put a price tag on that goal, which is to actually, we got young people in the gallery here, to have a world that's viable for them. And so, I thank the city for bringing, I think this is twice this year, or twice in the last year or so, that we've received a report of talking about climate change, because it's real. And so, you know, I think we as a city, we owe it to our community to do whatever we can do to stop this temperature from rising. So thank you very much for all the hard work you guys do. You know, acid rain was, you know, I prefer acid rain right now to deal with that than what we're dealing with right now. But thank you very much for working on this stuff, folks.
That's how you're going to get quoted, by the way, Councillor. No, I prefer acid rain. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Has someone moved this yet, Mr. Chair? Okay, I'd be happy to move it. Having said that, moving it is, I think it's really important we're clear on what we're actually approving, and it's a target. It's a target that we all hope that we can hit, but there are a whole lot of unknowns. Oftentimes when I get reports like this, I'll scroll down to the financial implications part of the report to find out if we can actually afford to do what we're trying to do, and realizing that we can't raise taxes endlessly. Well, we can, but they'll just replace us with people that won't. So you can't raise taxes endlessly. I am noting in the report it's contingent on a few things, and I think it's reasonable. It's contingent on emerging technological solutions, right? Like that's a huge thing. We need the efficiency and the temperature drops for things like heat pumps to come out, and that's happening, but we're banking on that happening more so going forward, being able to achieve some of these goals. It's also contingent on us being able to leverage grants from senior levels of government. If that doesn't happen, then we're going to be in trouble in terms of finding the funding here as well. It does say some things I'm a little more nervous about, like issuing debt. Not a big fan of that, but that's one of those things we'll have to look at to see what our debt capacity is going forward. So as long as we're going into this with our eyes wide open in terms of what the drawbacks of this are, I'm very happy to support it.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Singh, and thank you to staff for bringing forward this report and the detailed work. No one said that, you know, this was going to be cheap. So with that, I think it's important, though, that we do set an example for the community to follow, and this is something that, you know, the majority of residents that, you know, have spoken over the years consider this an important aspect in their daily lives, and I'm like with Councillor Davey. I really hope and confident that some form of technology out there will help alleviate a lot of these issues sooner rather than later. But anyways, I'm happy to support this. We do need a vision. We do need to move forward, and net zero is a worthy cause.
Okay, so the item has been moved by Councillor Davey. I'll take the vote. All those in favor and opposed, and that item carries. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the public hearing matters portion of the meeting. As a reminder, this is a formal public meeting to consider applications under the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make oral written submissions to the City of Kitchener before the proposed applications are considered, the person or public body may not be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal. And 6.1, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 15 Laurentian Drive. Mr. Pennell, I believe you're up first. I think we're zoning for playgrounds. We're zoning for playgrounds, I believe, on this one.
We'll get to that.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm joined by my colleague, Arwa Azur. She's a planner, and we're going to tag team for this presentation. Kitchener-Waterloo Christian School Society has made applications for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment, or OPA and ZBA. for the property addressed as 15 Laurentian Drive, and it's shown on the screen. The subject property has approximately 13.7 meters of frontage on the south side of Laurentian Drive, east of Westmount Road East, within the Laurentian Hills planning community. The property abuts Laurentian Hills Christian School, which is a private school, to the south. The property contains a single detached dwelling that was constructed in the early 1970s. That's part of the, as part of the low-rise residential neighborhood that was constructed to the east. The property is located close to several other schools. Laurentian Hills Plaza and a recently constructed commercial building are located on the opposite side of Laurentian Drive. The applicant is requesting to change the land use designation of the subject property from low-rise residential to institutional. No other changes to the official plan are requested. As you can see from the screen, the lands immediately to the south and west are currently designated institutional, which is the same as the requested designation, while the lands to the east are designated low-rise residential. The applicant is also requesting an amendment to change the zoning from low-rise residential 2, or Res 2, to neighborhood institutional, or INS 1, with a site-specific policy. And this is all under the city's newer zoning bylaw, Bylaw 2019-051. As you can see from the screen, the school lands immediately to the south and west are currently zoned neighborhood institutional, INS 1, which is the same as the requested zoning, while the lands to the east are zoned Res 2. The purpose of this OPA-ZBA is to permit future expansion options for the abutting Laurentian Hills Christian School. The region has also requested a site-specific provision to prohibit geothermal energy systems within the zoning. The purpose of this application is to permit expansion of the surface parking lot or to accommodate an additional outdoor play space for students. A conceptual plan showing an outdoors play space for the school students is provided on the screen. However, it should be noted that the owner is still exploring all options for the expansion. Accordingly, the purpose of the OPA-ZBA is to change the overall permitted use to institutional and to provide expansion options, not to facilitate a specific development proposal or site concept. And in any event, the owner intends ultimately to demolish the existing single detached dwelling at some point in the future. I'll pass it on to Arwa.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, through Mr. Chair. The requested amendments represent a rare opportunity to expand the lands for institutional use and add to the city institutional land inventory. It would increase the viability and functionality of the existing institutional use, thereby supporting the planned function and complete community. Would facilitate a land use that is close to transit, does not require servicing or road upgrade, and supports and strengthens the use of existing active transportation network within the neighborhood. May facilitate and continue the sharing facility and amenities with the surrounding community, including informal use of the parking lot, playground, playfield, and rental of the gym by community members. Staff received 2 written comments through the public engagement process, which have been addressed with the staff report. The requested official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications demonstrate good planning principles and is consistent with the provincial, regional, and city planning policies. Development and Housing Approval staff recommends that the official plan amendment application be adopted and the zoning bylaw amendment application be approved. We're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see a few questions of staff, Councillor Ioannidis and Deneau. We'll just come back after the delegate. Yeah, thank you if you don't mind. All right, for delegations, we have Kirsten Bairstill. Ms. Bairstill, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Singh and members of committee. My name is Kristen Barrisdale from GSP Group. We are the agents acting on behalf of Laurentian Hills Christian School. I just want to note that Carolyn Van Zwal, the principal of Laurentian Hills Christian School, is monitoring this meeting virtually. Just a quick overview of Laurentian Hills Christian School. They were established in 1967 with a 3-room schoolhouse, first opened on this site, or the adjacent site, in 1969. It is an independent day school providing comprehensive Christian education for students in JK to grade 8. It is an interdenominational school, and they estimate that their students come from around 60 different churches in Kitchener-Waterloo area. They have approximately 380 students roughly per year, and they've experienced about 1,500 graduates at the school. As Mr. Pennell touched on, what you see here is a demonstration, the graphic. The area in red is the proposed subject property to the OPA ZBA, and you can see the balance of the school to the south and to the west. As Mr. Pennell touched on, the school was purchased the property in 2015. The site has merged on title with the existing school site at 11 Laurentian. As Mr. Pennell noted, it is currently occupied by a single detached dwelling. It is currently being rented. The school has served notice, or did serve notice, to tenants in November 2023, advising them of their plans for the demolition of the school in order to facilitate the expansion of their existing facility. And that notice indicated that the lease of the property would be terminated by June 30th, 2024. The school continues to communicate with these residents and tenants, and to date has received no feedback or concerns or objections from them. This is just a concept showing the extent of surrounding community uses. I'm not going to touch on it. Mr. Pennell did a great job explaining what was surrounding the proposed development. And as he touched on, our development application did include a preliminary development concept or possible development concept. The intent of the expansion is to provide for an addition to the existing building, which likely will be generally kind of south of where you see this concept. So at this point, it's undetermined whether or not they will need the portion of the site to provide for a larger parking facility, or whether they will need to provide for the relocation of outdoor amenity space, including a playground, or a combination of both. But recognizing that any future development of this portion of the site would be subject to detailed design and approval from city staff. The property is currently located within a community area and designated as low-rise residential. As Mr. Pennell touched on, we're proposing to change the designations to institutional, and we're not seeking any site-specific policy provisions or special circumstances on this site. In addition, the site is zoned a Res 2 low-rise residential, and again, we're proposing to change it to neighborhood institutional. The application did not include any site-specific requests or provisions. However, we do recognize the region has asked for the inclusion of a special policy area that would prevent geothermal energy on the site, and we don't have any concerns or objections with that. We've had a chance to review the staff report and recommendation, which we are in favor of, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Ms. Barsdale, for coming in. My question is, what's the direction with the site in particular? Like, it would have been good to see some options of what they may have been thinking about with the site, because my concern is those folks that are living there, they could have stayed there for another 6-7 months. So, like, what's the timelines here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the impetus for this application was actually the school board proceeded with a site plan application and site plan pre-submission. They do have some plans as to what the expansion of the building will look like. Depending on what the results of that process was, they would determine then what they would need to do, whether it was to expand the parking lot to accommodate more staff or to expand the outdoor playground. However, through that process, it was determined that the property at 15 Laurentian wouldn't actually permit any expansion of the school uses on its site. So we were moving through this process to make sure that we get the designation and zoning in place in order to allow for that future expansion of the building. So they had started the site plan process. They're starting to put details to it. I'm sure, as you can appreciate, there's an apprehension of spending the money and doing detailed design if we are unsuccessful in securing the appropriate designations in land use zoning for the site.
Okay, all right, thank you. I have questions of staff.
Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Singh. Demolition, do we know, I know Councillor Ainan just mentioned a timeline, but do we know when demolition will take place of this, of the current household?
Through you, Mr. Chair, their intent is to get started on the expansion plans as soon as possible. So depending the outcome of this meeting, I think they would like to proceed immediately with detailed site plan approval for the expansion. The intent of the notice to the tenants was to provide for the expiration of their lease by June, with the hope that they could start demolition perhaps through the summer or into the fall. It's my understanding that the school is in pretty strong need of this expansion and would like to get started on it as soon as possible.
Okay, how many people are living in the house currently?
It's just a family in the house right now.
Okay, and so you indicated that they've had no concern put forward to yourself or the school, and the school has reached out to the family beyond the initial letter saying you have to leave by June?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've had some discussions with city staff. They ask the same types of questions throughout this process. It's my understanding that they have continued to communicate with them and keep them abreast of the process. And again, they have received no feedback or any concerns or objections from the current tenants.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, that's everyone. I'll just open it up for questions of staff. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, does this site, do we receive property taxes on this site?
It's a residential home, so I'm assuming that you
No,
would.
I'm talking, no.
Oh, you mean the institutional enterprise here?
Chair, I don't know. We'd have to ask revenue.
Okay.
Councillor Deneau, can you keep back in? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Singh. So is there any downsides to rezoning this property? I know you've recommended it, but is there anything that you could see being an issue?
Just
you,
keep
Mr.
your mic
Chair.
on, please.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. We did consider the loss of the residential housing unit as a potential concern, but we have to look at we ultimately looked at the greater picture. This is a loss of one residential unit. Tonight, there may be consideration of many more units that could be looked at as compensation. In this particular case, the loss of one residential unit was less of a concern than the planned function of the area and of the school, and increasing the viability of the existing use, adding to the existing institutional land inventory. So that was looked at as being of a greater priority given the bigger picture.
And you're right, I think anytime we've seen any displacement of residents and houses, it's been more than just one family in a house. And so I can appreciate that that's not a huge concern. But as far as the institutional uses, it's either going to be a parking lot or a park, right?
That's correct. Yeah, from what the applicant has said, that the parking lot or a playground are the most likely candidates. We haven't heard any other potential options. I suppose that's on the table, but from what the applicant's been saying, those are the two likely specific uses that would occupy the site.
Okay, and I don't think it's in your purview, but I would like to, my comment, I would like to see if the the school could reach out and actually make an offer, whether it's for moving arrangements, any costs that they have to burden going forward. And so that's kind of typical in some of these situations. And so if you can, either you or Ms. Barisdale can reach out to the household and offer some kind of assistance in something, that'd be great.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we can talk to the applicant about that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnston.
Councillor Singh, I have or Chair Singh, excuse me, I have a comment. Is that okay?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
open for comments.
Okay, thank you. And to follow up on Councillor Deneau's line of questioning, I would like to see the same thing with that house, and if I had a choice, which I'm hoping that we do, between a parking lot and a park, I think it would be much more important to put a park in there so that the community could all enjoy that. So perhaps whenever you're doing your site plans and that, if you could look towards that, would be appreciated. Thank you.
That seems to be all the comments. I'll quickly make my own. This happens to be in Ward 6, and I can attest that Kitchener-Waterloo Christian School Society has always been a good neighbor in that community overall, and just their commitment to community building as a whole. I understand some of the concerns outlined by members of the committee regarding loss of housing, but again, I think we're losing a unit or two. I'm sorry, Councillor, I didn't see you keying in. Okay, all right. Thank you. But again, we need space for schools. It's just as important. I mean, you can't have one without the other. You can't have housing and you can't have the appropriate level of institutional zonings, and that includes churches, that includes schools, because they are a core fabric of community in our society. So yes, it's it's not ideal that we're losing a house, but it's also I think important the fact that them as an enterprise will be able to grow and serve wider reach and more households for the learning needs within that community, and act as I think as a cultural organization in that neighborhood as well. So I think it's a balanced trade-off. I'll go to you, Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Singh. Sorry, I did key in just right after you had. I was just trying to figure out what I was going to formulate, because I too agree with you on the school. They've been good neighbors and they've been good stewards for the community, and I can attest personally. I know maybe about 10 years ago, they were one of the first organizations to adopt a solar roof through the Solar City initiative that we sponsored, 12 years ago. So I know they're going to do the right thing and all that, but I do feel like a parking lot wouldn't be the greatest thing. So just to flag that. So.
Okay, can I get a mover for? I can't move it as a chair. Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Starch. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, 6.2, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment for 135 Brentwood Avenue. Mr. Bateman will present first, and then we have, just for the attention of the committee, we have 7 delegations. So, and just as a reminder, we'll wait for, after staff presentation, we'll go through the list of delegates, and then we'll come back to questions of staff. All right. Mr. Bateman, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, committee members, staff, and residents of Kitchener. My name is Brian Bateman. I'm a senior planner with the Planning Department, and I'm very pleased to be bringing forward a report recommending approval of the OPA ZBA that would allow for an increase in building height and floor space ratio for a development proposal located at 135 to 161 Jackson Avenue and 136 Brentwood Avenue. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, I got it. Sorry. Okay. Site context. The subject site is outlined in red, as you can see. It comprises 6 properties in total, with a total area of 1.13 hectares. On that site, there are 6 detached dwellings. They are proposed to be demolished. The principal frontage of this, as you can see, is on Jackson Avenue, with additional frontage onto Brentwood. There's a singular property there at 135. There is a significant grade across this property. There's 5 meters, with the highest point on Jackson sloping down towards the lowest point on Brentwood Avenue. And just for purposes of zoning, when I get further into my explanation, the front yard is Jackson Avenue. The rear yard faces the Montgomery properties, and the side yard are Fairmount and Brentwood Avenue, respectively. Surrounding land use, it is primarily low-rise residential, comprised of existing detached, semi-detached, and multiples ranging in height from 1 to 3 stories. 136 to 161, or 130 to 161 Jackson are zoned Res 5, and I think that that's an important key component of this that I really want to highlight to the committee. That's the area outlined in yellow. All those properties are zoned R5, and that would already allow the use of the stacked townhouse dwellings that are being proposed, with the caveat that there's 11-meter height, or 3 stories, a 0.6 floor space ratio, and it could go up to 0.75 without an amendment to the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. Also further to note, on that, is that the current Res 5 zoning was R6 zoning under bylaw 85-1 and has been in place, and maybe surprised many people, that zoning has been in place on those lands since 1994. It's just taken 30 years to get it to the point we are today. 135 Brentwood Avenue is zoned Res 4, as are all those properties along Brentwood that are outlined in blue. Hopefully you can see that. And the Res 4 zoning allows for a limited range of low-rise residential uses. So not the full range like the Res 5, but primarily single, semi-detached, and street townhouse dwelling units. So it's designated low-rise residential in the official plan. And then in terms of servicing, just given the grades, water will come from Jackson Avenue, but it is proposed that sanitary and storm be extended from Brentwood Avenue, and there are for 2 reasons for that. It's the lowest point of the site, hence the need for the Brentwood property, and secondly, there's no storm on Jackson Avenue. So again, hence the need to include 135 as part of this redevelopment scheme. So this was the initial conceptual site plan submitted with the application. From staff's perspective, this was in a pretty good place when it came in. It shows the conceptual site plan in support of the application, and at that time they were proposing 120 units and 124 spaces in largely stacked townhouse building form, 12.5 meters high and a floor space ratio of 1. They proposed a publicly owned private space. I know it's hard to see on the plan, but it was very close to Jackson Avenue. And with this plan, the reason for the additional height being requested is to allow the basement units to be raised 1.5 meters from the ground. They want it above grade. They want natural light to be able to penetrate those units. And if anyone's lived in a basement unit, I think you can appreciate that. Because of that height increase, that 1.5 meter height increase over what's allowed as of right, and the grades on the property, and we've run into this before with the committee, we count floor space ratio by the floor area above grade. So that increases it above 0.6. In fact, it increases it closer to 1. So that's the reason why. I think it's also important to note to the committee that if this was sunk down and it was 1.5 5 meters lower, it would meet the height requirements, and they could have essentially they have the same use and the same densities on this land. What we're really evaluating here is that increase in height and that floor space ratio. Does that increase in height create any further additional impacts over what would be allowed as of right? And I would note with the as of right zoning, the side yard setback is 3 meters, not ideal. So through this application, we have an opportunity to make some significant change, some improvements to the site, and I think you'll see that with, you've seen that with this plan. So the next slide is the revised conceptual site plan. So it shows really a plan which has been updated as a result of comments that we've received and from staff input. The unit count is decreased to 118, and there's now 121 parking spaces, and there's 130 Class A and Class B bicycle parking spaces, and that's actually in both concepts. The side yard setback increased along Brentwood to 7.5 meters, which is more of a typical rear yard scenario. Again, keeping in mind 3 meter as of right and 11 meters height. They're asking for a 12.5 meter height at 7.5 meters. And they're stepping back to top level as well. So I think there's also, sorry, before I get into further on design, there's elimination of the POPs. Parks did not want the privately owned park space. We'd rather have a private amenity space, and you'll notice on the plan that the private amenity space is on the top corner or top middle portion of the plan. It's an expanded amenity area, and that includes many of the trees that are existing on site. So between that area there, pretty much saves most of those trees, and a lot of the perimeter vegetation as a result of the increased side yard setback will now be saved. Under the 3 meter scenario, they probably wouldn't, at least perimeter. So again, this is an improvement. The access off Brentwood needs to be maintained. It needs to be there for servicing. Our emergency services group, our fire, has said that they need that secondary access. And staff is further recommending that it be maintained as a full movement access because it splits the traffic from the site. Otherwise, we'll have all the traffic coming out on to Jackson Avenue. Next slide this is a cross-section. It really shows the relationship of 128 Brentwood, roughly, to build or block A of the plan. And really, it's just to show a couple things. It shows the setback of 7.5 meters, and it really shows the step back of that top level. There's no patio on that top level. So with that, the overlook has been reduced. It does show trees. Whatever trees are there, most will be maintained, and through the site plan process, we'll ask for additional plantings to help further enhance that buffer and privacy that we know is needed. So the official plan amendment. So it really is, it's just to add a site-specific policy to the low-rise residential land use designation that would allow for a building height of 12.5 meters instead of 11, and a maximum floor space ratio of 1 instead of 0.6, which could go up to 0.75 without amendment of the official plan. So again, we're not changing the land use designation here. We're just adding a site-specific policy. In terms of the zoning, the zoning bylaw amendment requests a change from it's dual zone. So the Brentwood property, as I mentioned, is our Res 4. The balance is Res 5. So it's from Res 4 for 136 Brentwood and Res 5 for the balance of the lands, so that it's comprehensively zoned Res 5 with site-specific provision 393 and holding provision 84H. That would allow for the increased height, the floor space ratio they're asking for, a reduced rear yard setback, and a parking decrease, a parking rate of 1.02 instead of 1.1. Holding provision 84 was requested by the region, and it's required to ensure the draft noise report that was submitted with the application is approved by the region prior to that holding provision being removed, and development can proceed. Opportunity. From staff's perspective, this would facilitate a compact, compatible, missing middle, low-rise development within an established neighborhood. It would support the development of 118 residential units with a high-quality living space to contribute to the city's inventory. I think it results in an approved design and includes design measures that have been vetted through a public input and of council's decision. And lastly, it's consistent with provincial, regional, and city policy direction. Highlights and conclusions is recommending approval of the applications to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw from Res 4 and Res 5 to Res 5 with 393-84H. Again, site-specific provision 393 will permit a building max height of 12.5 from the highest grade elevation and 13.7 from the lowest grade elevation. And it does vary across the site, but that's the highest that's needed. A floor space ratio of 1, an expanded side yard setback along Brentwood of 7.5 meters, a minimum rear yard setback of 6, and a minimum of 1.02 parking spaces per dwelling unit. Holding provision 84 will require final approval of the noise study by the region and be lifted prior to development. And in the opinion of staff, the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments demonstrate good planning principles and is consistent with provincial, regional, and city planning policies. Thank you, and I'd be very pleased to answer any questions you may have.
We're going to hold off questions of staff until we get through the delegations. Yeah. I'll just remember you. Okay, Julianne Van Westerholt. Welcome, Julianne. You have 5 minutes, as you know.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Mayor Verbanovic, members of the committee, staff, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Julianne Von Westerholt. I'm an associate at MHBC Planning, and I'm here this evening on behalf of my client, Mr. Shukla, who is present, to hear the comments about the application. I'm also here joined by the project team, Ryan Hicks from Snyder, Reichert and March Associates, Lynn Ingram from MTE Engineering, and Aaron Hill, Arborist. In addition, Urja Modi from MHBC is also here assisting me this evening. We're here to listen to the comments that are going to be made and to answer any questions that you may have. This is a quick snapshot of the neighborhood, which, as Mr. Bateman said, has a mix of single detached 1- and 2-story homes, as well as 3-story triplexes, 6-plex multiples along Montgomery and Fairmont. Lands to the south contain institutional uses, and further to the south are commercial uses along both Weaver and King Streets. Just for some context here, to the east is Montgomery Park and Highway 78. To the south and east are predominantly residential uses, including singles and multiples from 1 to 3 stories. Just a little snapshot again of the neighborhood. These were taken last fall. These images depict the built form within the neighborhood, which includes 1 and 2 single and semi-detached homes, as well as 3-story multiples. Image number 1 was taken from Jackson Ave, opposite the development. Image number 2 is one of the homes on the subject lands. Image number 3 is taken from Montgomery Road, facing west just north of Brentwood. And image number 4 was taken at the southwest corner of Fairmont and Montgomery Roads. So this image was provided for you, but was never formally submitted, and this was only provided for some context, and in terms of how far the development has evolved. This particular concept was much more dense than what is currently being proposed. It had 157 units proposed, an FSR of 1.22, 103 underground parking spaces, 45 service parking spaces, with no bicycle parking, complete tree removal, no on-site amenity, and 3 access points. I wanted to share this plan simply just to show the progression of the design of the proposed development, which started out the discussions around this property. The plan was never submitted, nor is it the one that is being advanced now. I just wanted to make that absolutely clear. It's just here to demonstrate a much more dense development with no amenities or tree retention and a lot of impervious cover. This was not pursued, as both the project team and the owner thought there was a better plan to pursue. Oops. Okay. This is the submitted site plan. It's a little bit more detailed than the plan that Mr. Bateman showed you, but just to quickly reiterate what Mr. Bateman had said, the stacked townhomes were along the Brentwood boundary, as well as the north boundary and the east boundary. The initial site plan, this was the initial site plan that was submitted to the city, and there were also a few street fronting towns along the Jackson Ave frontage, and you can see that park area or the private amenity space that was proposed as a park in the center of the site, right along the Jackson Street frontage. This provides the missing middle, as we heard from Mr. Bateman, form of housing, and it's more attainable. The proposed plan complies with the residential intensification in established neighborhood study, or the RIEN study. This was circulated to both the neighborhood and city departments, the region, and external agencies. And city staff made some recommendations, and we met with city staff to discuss these recommendations, and as a result, the plan was modified to this plan right now, which is being considered. The revised plan has a reduction of 2 units. To iterate, the current zoning permits the stacked townhouse built form. As per the city staff's recommendation, we revised the concept, which shows built form along the frontage as opposed to the park and the street fronting towns. Again, this aligns with the streetscape in the RIEN study, the required streetscape frontage. Also, in response to discussions with staff, the upper floors were stepped back. And this is really important because this helps with the overlook situation on adjacent properties. In addition, it kind of reduces the massing and makes it appear less tall. The units along the common boundary with Brentwood also have an increased side yard. We heard from Mr. Bateman that it's 7.5 meters, so that's 25 feet, whereas 10 feet or 3 meters is currently required. The placement of the units at this separation also provides for less impact to the boundary trees. These units are stepped back on the top floor. They provide additional separation, as mentioned, minimize overlook, and reduce the massing. The upper units are 2-story units, so they only have bedrooms up there, so that also minimizes the overlook potential. The site proposes a private amenity space internal, as you heard from Mr. Bateman, right adjacent to all the trees that are being saved in that pocket along the northern boundary line. Additional trees will be planted, and that will be determined through the site plan approval process. And in addition, each unit has a private balcony or patio. The site has visitor spaces, barrier-free spaces, and 25 EV-ready spaces. And as we heard from Mr. Bateman, we have 118 in-unit bicycle storage spaces and 12 visitor bicycle spaces. This is to help encourage active transportation in the area. I included this slide just to show that the initial proposed development and the palette that was initially contemplated on the left side was, a darker palette with richer tones of blues and grays and what have you. And through discussions with the project team, we revised the palette to be something we feel is more consistent with what was already in the neighborhood, and hoping that this is a more compatible palette with what is already there. In conclusion, the property provides 118 units, and they are predominantly 2-bedroom and 2-bedroom plus den options. There are no 1-bedroom options. This proposed development provides a housing alternative that is attainable and contributes to the city's pledge of creating 35,000 new homes by 2031 in order to help address the housing crisis. The proposed development provides that missing middle built form that resonates well with other three-story buildings in the neighborhood. The stacked townhouse use is currently permitted in the Res 5 zones and is compatible in scale to the three-story walk-up triplexes and sixplexes already located in the neighborhood. The units present a three-story along the street and present up to a four-story internal to the site. Again, this is largely due to the 5-meter change in grade across the site and the intent to minimize impacted trees, as well as creating well-designed living spaces that allows for natural light to penetrate into the lower level units.
Julian, I gave Brian a little extra time than his 5 minutes, but you've gone past 5 minutes too, so if you can start wrapping up, please.
I'm wrapping it up, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the reminder. I've read the staff report, and we are in agreement with staff's recommendation. This concludes my presentation, and the project team and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Are these rentals or condos?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they are proposed to be condo.
Okay, on this slide, you say provides attainable housing option to help address the housing crisis. What do you mean by housing attainability?
That they're more affordable than other perhaps single detached or semi-detached homes within the city.
But they're market value?
They are at market value, that's correct, yes.
What's the size of the amenity space?
I don't have any specific details here, but I could find out that information for you. Ryan, do you have that information?
Is that already outlined, or is that going to come through the site plan process?
Yeah, I mean, the exact measurements we would determine through the site plan process, but it is a much larger space than what was originally proposed because we're combining it with the existing trees on site, so it's going to be a nice amenity space for the residents.
But it's private, so
Yes,
it's not accessible?
that's correct, yeah.
Okay. And my last question has to do with the height increase that you're requesting. And, you know, it's framed in the way that, well, it will allow for more light to get into the basement apartments.
That's correct.
Do you have any information on how that increased height will impact the surrounding properties?
Sorry, in what way,
The
Councillor
increased
Chapman?
1.5 meter height, how will that impact the surrounding properties?
The increase in 1.5 meters, first of all, with the measures that we've taken to step back the building and to set back the buildings further from the property lines, likely won't be that significant from adjacent properties. Again, the increase to the units for the basement units would largely be internal to the site. And at the street level, so what you would see from Jackson Ave would be a 3-story presentation.
Okay, so no shadow study was done?
I beg your pardon?
There's no shadow study that
There
was
was one
completed? I
done,
didn't see it.
but there was not one required because it's only a 3-story building.
Okay, so
Yeah.
is it posted online?
I beg your pardon?
Was it posted online?
It was complete. It was part of the entire package that was submitted, an architectural package that was submitted with the application form, and I believe it was posted online, Mr. Bateman. Yeah.
With the final layout of the property or the earlier versions?
We have a revised submission that included that, Councillor Chapman.
Okay, I'll have a look. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. First of all, this rendering that you're showing us here, is this facing inward to the development?
The first slide through
the
you.
one I'm looking at?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it
Through-
facing inward? Is that the
No,
interior?
through you, Mr. Chair, this is the view from Jackson Ave.
So this is Jackson Street? Is Jackson here?
Yes,
That you just did?
that's correct, yeah.
Okay. And with regards to the, I might have the address wrong here, 133 and 135 Brentwood? So there's one house coming down in order to have an entranceway, is that correct?
136, I believe, is the address. Yeah.
136
Yes,
is coming down?
and it is proposed to be demolished, that's correct.
And what house is adjacent to that? to 136?
I would have to
That'd
look,
be
I would have to
133.
look it
Well,
up.
let's just say there's a house beside it.
There is a house beside it,
So
yes.
what's in between the two homes? I'm pretty familiar with this neighborhood, and I'm guessing it's grass. Like it's a, like it just goes, it flows.
Yes,
This neighborhood flows. So there's a house coming down, we're taking away a home to put in an entranceway.
Correct.
And this is because staff had requested that there be two entrances and exits, like 1, 2? Is that right? Who requested the two?
I believe Councillor Michaud will come back to questions of staff.
Okay, well,
But
Through
perhaps
you,
the,
Mr. Chair, I can
no, that's
attempt
okay.
to
I'm just going to try to
address
help
it.
you out a little bit. But I think because the elevation for servicing, I think that's a right of way for the servicing as well, but I'll look to the,
Through you, Mr. Chair, the access is proposed for a number of reasons. The servicing goes through that lot, servicing for these lands will go through that lot. In addition, with our early discussions with city staff, it was their preference for us to provide a secondary access to disperse the traffic throughout the neighborhood. Additionally, the fire department also required a secondary access, again, for fire emergency services. So that was through discussions with city staff, and it is also the logical low point. And I'm going to stop with the engineering speak right there because I am not a qualified engineer. However, I do have one here. If you have more technical questions, Lynn is here to answer those questions.
I'm not finished. So when you say the entranceway for Brentwood, it's access. So is that where the trucks are going to come in and, demolish everything and all that's going to happen? Is that what that's for? The new entrance onto Brentwood. Is that what that's for? You used a term.
I don't have any construction plans right now, so I wouldn't know exactly where all the
What was the
movement.
term you used, the reason that entrance is coming in, other than it's safer to have two entrances and exit? What was the term you
It's
used?
to disperse traffic
And there was another term, there was another reason you said that.
for a fire emergency
And there was another one.
response.
There was
And the
service. That's it.
servicing.
Thank you.
So your storm sewer and your water mains and everything is going to go in the ground and go through that entrance to connect to the street.
So where is the big mansion that's there now? Where is the servicing happening for that?
I think that the site was large enough, it probably was on well and septic.
Okay.
But I'm presupposing.
Okay. So the last thing I have, just kind of a comment I'm going to make. So you're saying that you had to have two entrances for safety reasons. Fire said this. I find this quite odd because we just came off of a development out off of New Dundee Road, and I spoke a number of times, about 120 units out there, and there's one way in and one way out, and that was never a concern. So there's some discrepancies.
I know Councillor Michaud, but again, understanding the site, again, there are more reasons than just the two exits. It's
Okay.
also for servicing as well. But do you have any more clarifications?
I have one more question,
Sure,
yes.
go ahead. Yeah, 50
So
seconds.
will there be fencing around this entire property?
There will be fencing,
And
yes.
what kind of fencing is
That is a detail that is determined at the site plan approval stage, and the fencing will likely be combined with landscaping as well.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Okay. Councillor Deneau. And Councillor Michaud, some of the technical specifics regarding the site plan. So what you can do is when you key back in, we can get clarification from staff also. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Singh. So how many houses are coming down? Just one?
6.
6. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Are they all currently rentals?
They are all currently leased, I believe, to the end of the year.
Okay. And I'm assuming they know there will be
Yes, they
a
have been advised of the development plans. That's correct.
Okay.
They're short-term leases. Yeah.
short-term, meaning like a year, 6 months?
I don't know the details of that. Yeah.
Okay, so of the 6, are they in the 6 units? Are there multiple families living in them? Are they single families? Do we know what the?
I do not know the demographics of those living residing in the homes currently, but I can find out that information for you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Has the developer approached, and we ask this question most times when there are families and there are households being displaced, has there been any communication regarding around moving expenses or any other financial expenses that these 6 houses will incur?
I would have to ask my client. I don't have that information at the moment.
Okay. So my suggestion and my ask is that that conversation take place sooner rather than later, so they have some kind of, before our next meeting actually would be perfect. Thank you. And what is the timeline to having shovels in the ground?
My client is intending that once approvals have been given to proceed to the next stage, which would be the site plan stage, and probably, bearing no difficulties with getting an approval through the process, they would be hoping to submit building permits or draw building permits in the first quarter of next year.
Okay. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you for your presentation. I just have a couple questions about the height, which seems to be one of the issues. The first question is, do you know offhand what the ceiling height of the individual floors is planning to be inside?
I would have to ask Mr. Hicks that question. The actual
I guess
floor
my
height?
question would be, in that, if it's not the minimum, 8-foot height, maybe that's a question for staff as well, would they consider lowering
9 feet?
that height?
I'm seeing a 9-foot height per floor.
9-foot height. So if this committee were interested in directing a bit lower, making that 8-foot height to lower the overall height, is that something that the applicant would consider?
I would have to refer to my client for that. It's not something that was contemplated during the build, yeah.
That's fine, so we'll follow up on that. And the other question I had was, the rendering shows a flat roof here. Do you know offhand if that is going to be a site plan thing that can change to a peaked roof, or because of the height restriction, will it certainly be a flat roof?
We're proposing a flat roof through the development.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Councillor Stretch.
Thank you. Would it be possible to build with this amount of density following the current bylaws?
With this amount of density? Probably, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, the question was more related to the current bylaw, Res 5. How many units? I think that's where.
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, you would be able to get a maximum floor coverage of 0.6. With the official plan would allow you to go up to 0.75 without the need for an official plan amendment. So that's getting very close to what this density would be. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And my question is about fire and water access. So if there was a change to an internal fire hydrant or sprinklers or another water system access, would that change the services needed?
I'm not qualified to answer that question. I do have an engineer here. Perhaps she can address that question. Okay. Would you like to direct that to her?
Staff later, or?
Mm-hmm.
It's seeming, we don't get this often, but the committee is getting very technical, so perhaps you have the consultants up there if you want to have them come down.
Yeah.
So as the questions get asked, the appropriate consultant can just step up and give actual specifics rather than us waiting too long and having staff to answer who may not have the technical stats as well. Mr. Baton's like, I'm not an engineer either.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name's Lynn Ingram from MTE. I'm the civil engineering consultant for the applicant. So can you ask your question again? I'm sorry.
The last question I asked was about water access. So the idea of having an internal fire hydrant or sprinklers or, another way for those residents to access some of the major servicing concerns coming off of Brentwood, that one home.
So water could come off of Jackson. There's a water main on Jackson, and we did the study, and water could come off of either Jackson or Brentwood. Sanitary needs to come off of Brentwood because of the depth. It's too high if we were to come off of Jackson, and there's no storm sewer on Jackson, so if we were to try and service off of Jackson, we would have to extend that storm sewer about 50 meters, which would be pretty disruptive to the neighborhood.
Okay. And then one of my last questions is about the fence going around the property. So right now, there's a brick wall fence, I remember from the walk, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Great, and so the new fence that needs to go up, you said that wasn't determined exactly what kind of fence, but could we, if we do see a fence, can we see a nice fence, a wood fence?
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly we would work with city staff in putting up a fence that is suitable and appropriate. City staff also have their standards and their specs that they would request us to comply with. So definitely we would work with city staff to ensure that it's a good fence.
Great, yeah, I'm looking for more than suitable and complying, but, something beautiful, something nice.
Thank you.
Is there anything else?
Not right now.
Okay, just keep backing after. All right, that's it. You're off the hook. Yeah.
Thank you.
Next is Jim, I think it's Laterney. Jim, apologize if I messed up your last name.
Thank you very much. Today we're here looking for respect for the residents of Fairmont, Jackson, Brentwood, Montgomery, the whole neighborhood, as well as abiding by the present bylaw 2019-051, which was passed 5 years ago. The numbers, as far as I know, have not changed in it. And if you take and grant all these variances, you're going to blow out Res 5 zoning because it's 1.5 meters above, it's 134% of the FRS. The setback is nowhere near what it should be because according to 2019-051, Section 4.19, anything over 12 meters has to be 15 meters from the lot line. And it doesn't say rear lot line or side lot line, so everything would have to be pushed into the middle. This project should have been Res 6 to start with the numbers. The floor space ratio, as I said, was 134% of the allowed. There's two other projects going on in the neighborhood right now. 295 Sheldon, 101 Clive, both of them have got 0.75 FSR. There's no reason this project should go above 0.75 FSR. Building heights, the bylaw says 11 meters maximum. The buildings are already drawn out to 13.2, 13.7, 12.8, 13.2, and 13.5, which is 110% of the 12.5 meter that they're asking for. Stories. The bylaw says it should be 3 stories. There is no such thing as 3.5 stories unless you got 3 stories in a crawl space. If they bring it down to 11 and they want the 4 stories, I don't care, but they'll have to push them down in the ground and dig out around the buildings more. That only makes sense to me, to stay with the 11 meters. As I said before, the setback, once you get above 12 meters, should be 15 meters off the property line. That would move Block A, which was the lower right. They would have to shorten that building and move it 7.5 meters north. B and C would have to move 7.5 meters north. Building D, which is along Jackson, would have to move 12 meters south. And building E, which is at the upper northeast corner, would have to move 12 meters south and 8.9 meters west. That pushes everything into the middle. The parking, there was a survey done by TTS for the region of Waterloo, stated 8% of the residents have no car in the region, 36% have one car, 40% have two cars. So to accommodate 84% of the residents, they require 102 spaces, and they're only asking for 120. There's not near enough. That survey said parking rate per unit should be 1.7. And on top of that, there's 5 barrier-free and 25 EV charging stations. EV charging stations should not be parking spots. They should be considered like a filling station. You bring your car in, you plug it in, when it's charged, you go. So it shouldn't be considered as a parking spot. Parks. MTE used 2.44 people per unit as the number they based their calculations on for sewer and water and everything. That's 289 people for this. It is another, so it comes to 445 new people in the neighborhood with all that's going on in there. And within a 20-minute walk of Montgomery Park is 10,153 new residents with all the buildings that are going up on Weber and King. That's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Jim, for being right on that 5-minute mark. It's appreciated. Those before you definitely
practiced.
way over their time. Questions of the delegation. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Singh. And thank you for coming out to advocate on behalf of your fellow neighbors. There's a few of them in the crowd or in the gallery. So correct me if I'm wrong. You're not against the development, you're against some of the variances that are being asked of.
If this development does not happen, there will be another one. We understand that. There is a need for more housing, and we know it's going to be in there. We just want it to be within the bylaws. If it came down to 11 and 0.75 and everything else, we're fine.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe I got this wrong because I was juggling chairs, but you made reference to pushing everything into the middle.
That's what bylaw, the 2019-051, section 4.19 says anything over 12, any building over 12 meters that backs up to or is adjacent to a low-rise residential, which everything in that neighborhood is, has to be 15 meters from the lot line.
Right.
So, and it doesn't say rear setback or side setback, it says 15 meters from the lot lines. So technically, everything would have to be pushed into the middle to accommodate these buildings.
And then parking around the periphery.
I would assume so.
Yeah, and does that sound like something that you would consider more amenable?
Part of the biggest problem with this is the overviewing, bringing the buildings out to the edge and overviewing everybody's backyard. If you move them in 15 meters, you don't have that problem.
Right.
Because the property line along Brentwood is already 2 meters higher than the properties on Brentwood. So if that's 13.7, they're going to be 15.7 above the existing buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, so I'm going to try to get the clarification as you gave your specifics about your assumption of what the bylaw setbacks are. And so it's just our committee members are as informed also. The applicant site is Res 5. The adjoining properties, much of them, are Res 5 as well. So, Mr. Bateman, would it be a 15-meter setback, even if within the site-specific zone change?
I can quote that for you.
I'm going to look to our staff. I know you're well prepared. Still give our staff an opportunity to answer as well.
Through the chair, no, 4.19 does not apply. That,
Can you give
that
specifics?
regulation was meant for where you have, let's say, a mid or high-rise development along our corridors that back onto our low-rise residential areas. That's where that 15-meter setback comes into play, not where we have low-rise residential lands to low-rise residential lands.
Okay.
So actually, it's really about, it says transition to low-rise, not transition within low-rise. That's the wording of it. So no, it does not apply.
Thank you. Jim, I'm not looking to get, between yourself and your understanding of the bylaw and our staff explaining it, who have written the bylaw, I don't want to get into an argument on that, but I did ask you questions, so I'll allow you a minute to add anything further if you want to. But the bylaw is as the bylaw is, as staff have explained it.
It just does not say that. It says transition to low-rise. So it's very vague, and I have my interpretation, and Brian has his interpretation.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
No, the reason why I looked for clarification is I understand it too because it is based on mid-rise and high-rise, and here they're both low-rise designations. Maybe that's where the understanding or misunderstanding is. But I'll look to staff and we look at our bylaws and seeing adding that clarity if it's lacking.
Well, then can I make a suggestion? That next time they amend this, they correct that?
I agree. I agree with you on there. Okay, there's no one else? Thank you, Jim, for coming forward. Okay. Next up is Aaron McLaughlin. Aaron, you have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for coming and for your interest in my neighborhood. I'm going to read from my phone because the other draft that I had doesn't apply right now.
If you can just bear with us, Aaron, if the podium can be raised, just so the mic is closer to you and we can hear you better.
That's fancy.
Yep.
All right. My name is Aaron. I'm here today out of concern for Eastwood community and to speak from my experience living there. Eastwood is sought after as a quiet and calm place to live, populated by mostly red brick houses built in the 1950s, surrounded by trees. Generations have been raised here, and the people that grew up here, they keep track. From playing in the green lot that was there before the castle was built, to attending Eastwood Collegiate, then choosing to settle here, the residents of this neighborhood are invested in what happens to it. They keep track of its history. This development will intensely impact our neighborhood. The canopy of Eastwood Forest is literally being cut down and leveled. With the inadequate parking for this population, there is a concern that in time residents will have no choice but to park in the surrounding roadways, and subsequently that we will have no choice but to allocate parking onto our front yards. Many residents already manage with tandem parking and reduced laneways. The increase in traffic will be a big concern around the school, park, and ball fields. It is naive to think otherwise. The added pedestrian traffic at the same time will require additional stop signs, stoplights, crosswalks, garbage cans, street lights, etc., especially with the new roadway being introduced on Brentwood. Bike lanes will also need to be integrated onto roadways as well. We understand we are in the Central Transit Corridor, but this is not yet an LRT area. We do not fit the criteria for these types of variances. The limitations of the existing code still apply. Proximity to the expressway and highway access for everywhere else will always be a selling point of this area, and development should be realistic of that feature as well. The proposal has rationalized that the additional height is required to allow for natural light to the basement level. I can appreciate this, as a long time ago as a student, I spent years in basement apartments in KW. But we are not here to evaluate the living standards of the buildings the living standards that the buildings will provide. However, basement levels could easily be afforded the same natural light or more without the buildings having to be intrusively tall if the buildings had been adjusted around the perimeter. This is a sacrifice that the builders are not willing to accommodate. The developer is asking us to assume all of the sacrifice, such that the proposed building can be built in a form that is intrusive to the space around it and beyond what is necessary. The planning report acknowledges that the effect of the variances of increased height will hit the houses on Brentwood the hardest. The development application and planning report do not acknowledge that with these variants, development will start as only 5 feet taller than what is allowed as of right at the top of the lot, but by the time the extra 5 feet is added at the bottom, it is being added on top of the grade change and existing raised elevation. So while the buildings may be low-rise with the height variance at the top, by the time construction reaches the bottom of the lot, buildings will fully qualify as mid-rise and no longer fit the R5 zoning at all. These 4-story mid-rise buildings will be experienced as uphill from the 1.5-story low-rise homes on Brentwood. This will effectively feel like R6 zoning against a 1.5-story R4 zone. The effect will be claustrophobic, not to mention the impact of noise and light pollution, or that it will block the entire sky from our homes. The planning report also mentions the idea of a 45-degree angular plane. The original design for this proposal was augmented with improved setbacks and a 22.5-degree step back of the top floor you have seen. This is a welcome step in the right direction, but it does not achieve anything close to a 45-degree angular plane that was being referenced in that exists in the codes. Not even the top 25% of the structure will achieve a 45-degree angular plane. These changes do not result in adequate mitigation of the impact. There are no amenities around to support this population. On a Saturday afternoon, Eastwood delegates had to drive to Fairway for seating. If residents don't have cars, they won't have many options for groceries or restaurants. Living on Jackson, Montgomery, Fairmont, or Brentwood also means residents will have to live through the experience of the entire construction process. For those of us who work night shifts or already work in the trades or work high-stress occupations, this is going to be an arduous process in any case. But despite the unique proximity to so many homes with any buffer of separation, our requests for adapted hours of construction and detailed construction protocol have been ignored. Being downhill from what is now a green space, there is a concern that development will cause flooding on our properties. As the majority of the lot will now be paved and/or structures, any error in stormwater management will be a big problem for us. It is important to remember that improving unnecessary variances for this lower scale project that doesn't fit well will not make or break the housing crisis. Any development on the subject lands should fit within existing zoning standards for densification, and no undue stress should be put on a select few of the community. Thank you for your time. So that's what I wrote.
All right, there's no questions. Thank you, Aaron. Next up, it's Andy Kier. Andy, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
I'll try to get through it in 5. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll give you a minute extra because everyone else.
Okay. So this development, where do I point this? Is looking for variances from the FSR, which is supposed to be 0.6, setback, which is supposed to be 7.5, parking, which is supposed to be 1.1, and the height, which we'll get to in a moment, but they're asking from 11 meters to 12.5, where almost none of the buildings are 12.5. There are some tests just to get to a minor variance, and this exceeds the minor variance. So it first should pass these tests before you get to the excess variance. And that is that the intent is being maintained of both the official plan and the zoning bylaw. And it's clear that these do not. So within that, you have the Planning Act, which states what is the responsibility of the municipality. And from here, you can see that some of this is being ignored. So the Kitchener official plan, which includes the Rhines report, which was fully adopted according to all dates of March 20th, 2017. And it is incorporated into all the bylaws in bylaw 2018-094. And it states the intent of the bylaws. So the intent does not need to be derived from any one person. It's stated in the official plan. It's stated behind the bylaws as to why they have the bylaws the way they are. And within the official plan, you can see the site number there for it, but part of it is the proposed development must be sensitive to and compatible with the character, form, planned function of the surrounding context. It does not say it should be. It is a mandate to be sensitive to and compatible with the character, form, and function of the surrounding context. We should not have something imposed on us that does not fit that category. You can see from this slide, sorry, my eyes are bad, I'm a little old. I'll have to refer to my paper sheets. There are some tests that are some goals for achieving a complete and healthy community within the official plan. Within that, that's encourage good planning, contribute to an enhanced quality of life, ensure land use compatibility, ensure our community will be functional, and ensure an aesthetically pleasing community. So here is a little funny thing. Jim was bringing up some of the variances that don't really make sense, but here's one that is clearly stated. It says in section 7.5, lands located in Appendix C, central neighborhoods, for permitted uses, subject to this regulation, the maximum build height shall be 9 meters, not 11. So that red dot, that's where that proposed development is going to be. That's the map of the central zone. That's 9 meters. To scale, this is what a backyard looks like without the development. You can see the fence, a little bit of the house behind it. That's what it looks like with it. I don't think that's reasonable. And that's the approximate height with the setback when you look at it from the road. That's not minor. So they're talking about a 12.5 meter variance. But every time you look at it, it's more than 12.5 meters for every block. So here's block B, looking at 13.7 meters from their floor space to the top of the building. The problem is, if you look at the green lines, there's a rise from their floor space to everybody else's, the common ground. The common ground is between 1.5 meters to 3 meters below their floor space. So you have to raise that 13.5 or 13.7 meters by up to 3 meters. And you see it continues. They keep having higher than 12.4. And they've stated in their plan, as you can see in this coming from their official plan, that all of their units are 4 stories and not 3, when RUS 5 only allows for 3. So when you look at the height analysis, you can see that even on a minor variance, everything fails. So they have to pass that minor variance before they should get to the other variance. When you look at an FSR, table 7.6 says the maximum floor space should be 0.6. Why have an FSR? Well, they're asking for 1.0 without cost. There's no reason to build that density except to increase the profit to the developer. Does nothing for the community. Does not really increase affordable housing because these developments are not going to be affordable. They're going to be between $700,000 and $900,000 with $800 a month in condo fees. That's not going to be an affordable housing. So it increases substantially to the neighborhood population, the public parks, and the developer's own report states that there's going to be a doubling of traffic in the neighborhood or close to it. That's not a minor change. And it ignores the fact that street parking causes more flow issues, and with only a 1.02 parking, you're going to have street parking. So the FSR infrastructure, there are problems with the storm sewers on Montgomery. Everybody knows that. That's been ignored in the report. Here we can see how our neighborhood is. We have events all the time. We are a community. We are not just a development opportunity. And you can see from the parking, they've quoted the parking at 1.02 from the TTS report, when in actuality it's 1.7 per household. And that causes a problem because where is that extra parking going to go, especially in the wintertime? If you're off by 40 cars, there's not enough room for 40 cars on that subdivision.
Andy, if you can start summarizing.
Sir?
If you can start summarizing, sorry.
Okay. This can lead to some costly consequences, which include the requirement to widen Jackson widen Montgomery Road. You're going to have to widen Mackenzie Avenue just for traffic flow. You're going to have to put a stoplight at Jackson and Weber in order to make sure there are no accidents. You're going to have to upgrade the storm sewer on Montgomery Road to accommodate the storm sewer that they're talking about, displace students from existing schools, and it's going to be an infrastructure overload to other utilities.
Okay, thank you, Andy. I'll look to questions of the committee. Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Clearly, you put a lot of thought and effort into it. My question isn't actually on that. I'm just curious in general if you've been made aware of the limit of council's authority should we, for example, decide to turn this down or not make a decision. Have you been made aware of the OLT process?
Well, I think that there is authority to deny any application. That's what the committee is for. Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. And so when you speak about the authority, being afraid of consequences of going to the land tribunal does not take away your authority. That is setting aside your authority right away before you've made the decision. I would say stick up for the bylaws and the official plan that Kitchener has in place, and let's just come up with a development that sticks to the bylaws. We're not opposed to development. We would like an FSR of 0.6. We want parking of at least 1.1 for every unit. We want setbacks that are proper, heights that are reasonable, that don't impede on other people's backyards and other people's properties, and do not force a community to be dissolved and reabsorbed into another community that somebody wants to develop.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't want to run offside with the chair, but I will address that in my comments later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Just a clarification, though. And you said the setbacks. Are you saying it should be, like the current bylaw requires 3 meters, and from staff presentation, it outlines that setbacks are much greater than that. Do you want to elaborate on that part?
That's an arbitrary decision where the front and the back of this development is. With it protruding through Brentwood, would that be the front? Where is the side? They're not including side setbacks for between the buildings. So they've not designated where the front, back, and sides are. So it's arbitrary, and the space between the property lines should be 7.5 meters, which is a proper setback.
So space between?
The existing houses, property line, and the new development should be 7.5 meters, because the rear of the building is the rear of the house that backs onto it. So if you're a logical person, you look at it, you say, that's the back of the building. That's the back of the building. And the back of the building goes onto the backyard of another house. So it's arbitrary to say that's the front, that's the back, that's the side, when the buildings face all different directions.
I understand it, and I think through your argument you're saying because it faces many different directions, many different houses, it should be the 7.5 on all of them. And I think from our staff perspective is there's only one rear, one front, and 2 sides of a site. But that's okay, I'll ask clarification question of staff of that as well. Okay. Thank you very much. Next up is Barbara Mislenko. Welcome, Barbara. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, just 1 second.
I keep on saying 5 minutes. Everyone keeps going over 5 minutes. But I'm going to look at you to
You've been really
maintain
kind.
that 5 minutes.
Okay, 1 second. As part of the delegation, I'm only here to speak about the residents at 136 Brentwood Avenue and the proposed roadway from the developer. And this is part of the proposal for the development for 135 to 161 Jackson Street and 136 Brentwood Avenue. like in every good presentation, we always like to acknowledge and thank the council for letting us speak on this issue. And we also like to acknowledge that this is the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee people. And as a result, we should respect the land. The location, 136 Brentwood Avenue, is located in Kitchener in Eastwood Territory and was rezoned 3 times since 2019. In 2019-051, it was rezoned with 50,000 other homes and residents in Kitchener. With rezoning under CR0ZBY Stage B2, it was modified again. Finally, by bylaw 2022-040, Brentwood zoning, again under Section 38, to just Res 4. So, current use, 136 Brentwood Avenue is currently being used as housing. It is actually being currently used as a rooming house for 8 low-income individuals. Those low-income individuals multiply and have over 4 cars in that single driveway. The actual aesthetic of the neighborhood is raised bungalows and 1.5-story homes, individual dwellings. The pictures by the proposal showed, yes, we do have apartments on Montgomery Avenue, but we are discussing 136 Brentwood Avenue. It is only single dwelling homes that are raised bungalows or 1.5-story homes. There are only 120 homes from Montgomery Avenue all the way to Sheldon, almost the same amount of residents as proposed in the build. I've been asked by my fellow neighbors to speak specifically only about 136 Brentwood Avenue. My older neighbors and one of my neighbors who actually built most of the homes in and around Jackson Avenue and on Brentwood Avenue are extremely concerned about the traffic, and most apparently, sorry, I keep jumping here. I'm not used to your mouse. Go back. Okay, neighborhood concerns. Thank you. So, neighborhood concerns about a roadway in the middle of a residential area. So, they're going to tear down a residential dwelling that is almost in the middle of a block. It has been explained to me that the safety of families walking on the sidewalk, residents walking their dogs, and seniors cycling in the neighborhood will all be affected by this roadway. Increased traffic from over 116 cars using a roadway in and out on average more than 6 times a day. We have circulated and have over 226 signatures on a petition for this residential development. One of the key points is not allowing a roadway at 136 Brentwood Avenue. One of the concerns on the petition was, I am concerned any developments that are likely to displace low, modest income residents to provide a market in these units.
Barbara, can you please summarize over your time?
Okay, oh, sorry. I just want to let you know, if they're selling these units for like $700,000 and the taxes go up, my neighbor Carl will not be afford to live in his home that he's lived in for 50 years.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple more minutes.
You-
I have to get into the land use because
I'm sorry,
this is the only unit
Barbara,
that is Res 4, and the builder has not put in an application to have it rezoned. And part of your Res 4 application is that this land can only be used for housing, not roadways.
Barbara,
And
if
we
you
were
can please
told by.
summarize, please.
Okay, this
Yeah.
is my last summary.
Thank you.
We were told by your planning department, and the builder can apply and get information from fire services to install hydrants within the townhouse complex, increase the width of the one driveway, and the second roadway will not be required by the builder, so the house will not have to be removed. Also, in regards to storm sewer, 10 to 12 years ago, they replaced the storm sewer on Brentwood Avenue because we were fed from Ottawa Street, all down Mackenzie, Sheldon, all the feeder streets, Raymond, everything, and our street used to flood up to the public sidewalks on both sides. So they redid the storm sewer and adding another 120 homes, doubling the population and tacking into the storm sewer on Brentwood Avenue will cause overflow into our homes. And also the main sewer feed down Montgomery was never upgraded or changed.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Barbara. I will see if there are questions from the committee. Seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you for presenting. Next, we have Stephanie Patton. One more, I think. Stephanie, 5 minutes.
Yes,
Please
I've
and thank you.
practiced, yes. Okay. Good evening, Council. My name is Stephanie Patton. I've been a resident of the Eastwood community for 5 years. I apologize if I get emotional. My family purchased our first home in 2019. Eastwood stands as a testament to the enduring sense of community and pride that characterizes this unique neighborhood. In the conversations shared while tending to our gardens, playing at the park with our kids, or walking our beloved pets, one quickly grasps the depth of history and connection that Eastwood residents hold dear. Oh, I'm so sorry. Here, support and a shared commitment to fostering a thriving community exist in abundance, a rare gem that enriches the lives of all fortunate enough to reside within its boundaries. Just a few weeks ago, here in this room, 2 of my fellow members of the Eastwood Neighborhood Association of Kitchener, or ENAC as we like to call it, highlighted our neighborhood's unwavering enthusiasm for community events. Each gathering has exemplified the spirit of togetherness and celebration, exceeding our most optimistic expectations. I take great pride to be a part of ENAC Association, helping to plan and execute these amazing events. And it is within these vibrant settings that I envision raising my children, a community where values and unity and engagement are not just spoken of, but lived out daily. My personal housing journey led me through various locations within the Waterloo region, searching for ideal environments to raise my family. Upon settling on Eastwood, a place that holds sentimental value from my high school days at Eastwood Collegiate, I found a sense of belonging unlike any other. The sense of belonging was immediate upon my arrival on Brentwood Avenue, where neighbors extended warm greetings and kind gestures that spoke volumes about the tight-knit fabric of our community. Engaging with local events and initiatives, my family and I have taken immense pride in contributing to the rich tapestry of this diverse and community-oriented neighborhood. However, amongst these shared joys, we've also faced challenges, such as the emergence of the shelters that brought forth instances of theft and unsettling encounters. But a wave of solidarity swept through our neighborhood as we bounded together to address these newfound realities. The proposed construction of 118 units threatens to disrupt the delicate balance of our community, as it fails to align with the essence of our neighborhood. The removal of so many trees in the neighborhood would have detrimental effects to our community and environment. It would disrupt the natural beauty and greenery that contribute to the neighborhood's charm and character. The loss of these trees could impact air quality, biodiversity, and overall ecosystem health in our area. Additionally, it may lead to increased heat retention, decreased shade, and a loss of habitat for wildlife. Preserving trees is crucial for maintaining a healthy and sustainable environment for current and residents to enjoy. The developer has a unique opportunity to positively impact our community by abiding by the City of Kitchener's thoughtfully constructed bylaws and constructing potentially 80 breathtaking units surrounded by ample trees and green space that future residents can truly cherish for years to come. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure. In the face of allegations of NIMBYism, it is crucial to clarify my stance. The term NIMBY, or not in my backyard, originated from residents resisting hazardous developments that were bringing dangerous chemicals and contaminants into their communities in the late 1970s. They fought for environmental justice. It reflects a deep concern and well-being for our surroundings. I, like many others, refuse to compromise the safety and integrity of Eastwood for the sake of unchecked development. The prospect of toxic infrastructure encroaching upon the very essence of our neighborhood is a reality I resist and I will continue to oppose. In closing, I implore you to consider the profound implications of the proposed construction in our cherished neighborhood. With amendments that align with the character of Eastwood, a vision of sustainable growth, community pride, and a shared prosperity, we can pave the way for a future that honors the spirit of Eastwood. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I did it.
No, you did, and you did very well, and I appreciate you being well within your time. Thank you very much. There are no questions.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Okay, there's another person for Janice Hamalele. Welcome, Janice. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't take 5 minutes. I just would like to make an observation that goes back to 136 Brentwood Avenue. To demolish that house and stick a roadway in the middle of a block of houses when people have been walking up and down that road for 70 years is an accident waiting to happen. You're going to have somebody taking their walk, going down that road, and somebody from the new development who's in a hurry rushing out of that road and hitting them. It makes I think it's very dangerous, and I think it's very poor planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll get clarification from staff if there's an avenue and absolute necessity of having a second exit. All right, well, that's all the delegations, and just want to bring attention to the committee that there were a number of written submissions received through email as well. So you can reference those. I'll open up for questions of staff. Mayor Verbanovich.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all the delegations that came this evening. A couple of questions of staff. On the issue of the fence, as has been noted, there is if I remember correctly, it's a brick fence that surrounds the entire property. Is there a reason why that brick fence can't remain in lieu of something else being constructed? Through you, Mr. Chair, it may be possible to retain parts of it. I don't believe that it's built exactly on the property line. I think it's inside of the property in a few cases. When we were on site and walked the site, I did notice that there are cases where it is on a retaining wall that may need to be repaired or replaced. That's aging. So through the landscape review as part of the site plan, we could look at that. In any case where there would be parking that would be adjacent to a residential use, in this case the parking is all interior, the bylaw does require a visual barrier, but we can certainly look at establishing a visual barrier, whether it's retaining portions of the brick fence or new construction of what typically would be a board-on-board wood fence. Yeah, and I understand what would be typical. I guess what I'm really looking at is, I mean, there's something quite substantive there right now, and something that's been a significant part of that neighborhood for many, many years. And I'm just struggling to understand why it can't potentially, like, I guess I'd like to see a scenario where we actually require it to stay in place. Or, you know, if there's some sections that need to be adjusted, where actually it could be redone with the actual brick that's already there. So I don't know if that's something that can be looked at between now and next week with the proponent. That's certainly one piece. The second piece is on the issue of the Brentwood Drive situation. I understand some of the potential concerns around traffic. Have we looked at, if the issue is having a secondary fire access, have we looked at the possibility of Brentwood being used for the underground utilities, but that secondary fire access would actually not be open and would only be there as a secondary access, and for some reason the first one is closed off in an emergency? Has that been explored with fire?
Staff, if you can just keep your mic on, there's a huge row of additional questions coming your way.
Okay. All right, not that, through you, Mr. Chair, no, not specifically. That's not been explored with them, other than their response saying that they need that secondary access.
So I guess that's something that I would like looked at, because I seem to recall that there have been other examples of applications that have been considered in the past where we have done that, where a secondary one was there for similar reasons, but it was actually closed off except for when, you know, if fire needed it because the first one is blocked off. So I think that's something that's worth exploring. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Singh. There's been comments made about having fire hydrants inside this development, and that would take away the need for that access. Is that something that is true, or is that something that we can look into? Just like to know your comments on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, at this point, I mean, we're really dealing with the land use. That's a very pointed, specific question, probably more for the detailed design, but certainly it's something we can take a look at. Again, I can only go by what fire has told me, that they really need that secondary access. So, you know, perhaps a fire hydrant, but maybe they need the access in addition to that as well. I don't know.
Okay, and that's just another question too. Are we under any sort of time pressure here? I know with some decisions we have to have a decision made by a certain date. Are we anywhere near that? If we need some more time to explore things?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just calling, it's at the beginning of my report. We are on a time crunch on this one. Okay. Sorry, just bear with me here.
Yep.
The applications would get to the 120 days on May 9th of this year. So a decision would need to be required by May 9th.
If I could just offer, through you, Chair, a point of clarification on our emergency services policy. So our fire department, our fire prevention officers will review each development application for compliance with that policy. There is a little bit of flexibility there. Ideally, the emergency route is not more than 150 meters, and that can include looping on site. This site is very close to 150 meters. Once the fire truck is located within the fire route, which has to be 6 meters wide, so a clear driveway around, 6 meters wide, there could be a fire hydrant so that a hose length from the private fire hydrant to the highest bedroom on the furthest floor at the furthest part is not more than 90 meters away. So it is a detailed calculation that our fire prevention officers do, where they actually measure the hose lay on the stairs to ensure that the end of the hose can get into the furthest bedroom on the furthest floor or the furthest part. In this case, in a secondary emergency access, we have other development applications that have been approved with a secondary emergency access. It would still require the removal of the dwelling at 136 Brentwood, but it could be used for emergency access only. The benefit of having 136 Brentwood as a standard access is it allows better on-site circulation so that the garbage vehicles that pick up the Molochs are able to leave in a forward-moving motions without having to turn around on site. If a circular road is provided in the middle of the site, it would remove about 10 to 12 parking spaces. So there would be additional, it would be the same amount of asphalt, but less functionality.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Singh. Mr. Bateman, you originally, in your presentation, I didn't hear who you said no to the POPs. Was it staff or was it the developer?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was park staff that they feel that the reason why is they know that the area is well served by Montgomery Park. There'll be upgrades for that. So there wasn't a need specifically for a public type park. So, and they preferred a private amenity space instead.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm gonna ring the bell again about the alternatives to that actual road having to be in place. And so I'm actually looking to defer this or refer this. I think there's some answers that need to be had between now and when we meet again. I think the developer has come back with some improvements, but at the same time, I believe there's a little bit more wiggle room that actually can work. I know some of the folks are not happy about the development period, but as the individual at the beginning mentioned, that he knows that there's going to be another developer. If we turn this down, there's going to be another one. And so I think if we can get what's best for that community and work with the developer as much as we can, I think I feel very comfortable in that. And just trying to iron out some of the questions we really don't have answered. So at the appropriate time, I'm going to do that, Mr. Chair.
Do you want to outline what those questions are?
Well, I think it's Councillor Davey mentioned about dropping the height from 9 feet to 8 feet in the ceilings. There's some concerns about the setbacks. The fire issue, and so yeah. And I'm sure there'll be more that come up with the next round of questions. But what I heard from the questions earlier is that, or the comments, is that there are some good. I think there's some wiggle room we can allow for.
Okay.
And I will note this is the first time I've asked for a referral, so or deferral.
You're well within your right to ask for a referral or a deferral. I just wanted to make sure that we are giving the appropriate direction to staff as to how they want to engage with the dialogue with the developer, as opposed to just an open-ended saying referral. Yeah. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. A couple of things. So,
and again, Councillor Michaud, because we are anticipating a potential referral, you can also frame some of your questions in a way for staff to come back. Yeah.
That's what I'm doing. Thank you, Councillor Singh. Chair Singh, pardon me. So, If the problem is with like the garbage trucks or trucks turning around in this complex, we'll call it, because it will be a townhome complex, I'm wondering if it's ever been considered to lower the number of units in there in order to make it so that you can build the community that it is, and the trucks can go in and out and go around, and it won't interrupt the surrounding neighborhood.
Through the chair, my role is really to evaluate the application at hand. He's asking for 120 units with that height increase, and that's really what my analysis, my report speaks to. Whether he chooses to, lower units or not, I can't really say. I know.
Okay, then that's fair. So I'm just wondering if perhaps we can't use that as some of the questions to go back to the developer and see if we can work with the developer to make this a community within a community, and make it so that, because the residents here aren't against having a development there. They know that's going to happen. They had that turret castle in the middle of their backyards for decades, so they're used to this. But I think it behooves us to do everything we can in order to make sure that developments are coming in, and we're still getting intensification. We're still, putting homes in the ground for people to move into. Doesn't mean we have to jam them in like sardines in a tin can. I think we can maybe do a little bit.
Again, I'm giving a lot of latitude today. Again, everyone going over the limit of time, and again, clapping and response from the audience and the gallery. It's not the right decorum for this meeting. And again, as we have a number of other people keyed in, if you can please refrain from comments and more specific questions to staff, we'll have an opportunity for comments as well. Do you have any more questions? Yeah, okay, all right. You can key back in for comments afterwards. Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to confirm, it sounded like Mr. Bateman already referenced it, but I was just wondering, in staff's opinion, and again, we're not sure if it's a possibility or not from the developer side, but if they were able to lower the ceiling heights by drop it down to 8 feet, just quick math says that's probably about half a meter savings off of the height, but staff doesn't have any experience whether that's an accurate estimate or not.
I'm not sure if I follow the question quite well, but you're saying if you lower the height of the ceilings, will it lower the floor space ratio?
No, we'll lower the 12.5 meters to 12 meters.
Okay. Yeah, it should lower it, yes.
Okay. That's my only question. I did say that I'd be making comments earlier about the whole OLT, and it sounds like we're going to be going in the deferral direction, which means I can't make comments, so I guess we'll have to stick around for the final decision at council. Just want to be clear on that.
Yeah.
Sorry, the question that you asked is if there's a foot taken off each floor, right? Okay.
Yes. Good. All right. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I was wondering if staff could tell us, if we were to stick to the current zoning, how many units would fit on that property?
Key in.
There we go. Through the chair, I haven't seen that analysis to be able to tell you.
Is that
my opinion, although I think if they lowered, if they did lower the height and put the basement level in the ground, to me you would be looking at a very similar building form with a similar number of units. It's just that it's right, like they're raising it above the ground to get some light into those units. If you were to lower that unit height by 1.5 meters, they would meet the 11-meter building height. So in theory, it should be the same number of units, or very close to that.
So it would be by tweaking the setbacks and the heights and I guess those two things, you could still have 120 units.
I would think so. I haven't seen a plan to confirm that, right, but that's just from my experience, that I think that it would be very close to that.
And would that comply then with the current zoning? Or is
Yes,
that?
yes, it would.
Yeah. Okay, so that's maybe something that you could come back to us or speak to the developer about. The other question I had, well, I was actually surprised to hear that at 136 Brentwood, it's a rooming house with eight low-income individuals living there. Does staff have any idea of how many people we're actually displacing? I know this was brought up earlier, but there's no mention of a rooming house. Like that's really low-income rent, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we understand from hearing from residents that there may be international students who are living in that home. We don't know how long their tenancy is and what their lease arrangements currently are. We do know that we are in the spotlight for having a shortage of student housing, so it's something that the owner will have to consider should they terminate the leases.
Right, and maybe there could be some discussion with the owner around, a rental replacement plan with these residents, rather than simply I don't know, the number N12 or whatever, see you later sort of thing. Anyway, I'd like to, if you could come back with something along those lines as well, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Singh, and thank you for this opportunity to ask for another number of things that you'll be able to take to their planning team, who I hope are also taking lots of notes as we're speaking. So I concur with everything that's been said so far in terms of opportunities to go back. One thing that I picked up on as well from one of the presentations was about the park space in particular, and recently took a drive over there to kind of check out the whole area myself as well. And it is a nice big park. I'm wondering if perhaps the developer would consider speaking with our Parks Department and look at ways of augmenting the park. Maybe there's some extra equipment that could be put in, and maybe some improvements that when we're adding people to a neighborhood, some improvements could be also done to the park at the same time. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may offer a point of clarification, parkland dedication can be provided in two ways, and pretty soon 3 different ways. One is either pay cash in lieu or dedicate land. The third way is a POP space, which is new to Kitchener, and through the review of this application, the preference from our Parks and Operations team were to require cash in lieu in order to use those monies to put into the Parkland Trust Fund, which is used to improve park spaces and acquire additional parkland. So that is in fact what is being proposed by our Parks and Cemeteries team.
Sorry, so what you're saying is that that's not a possibility? Is it never a possibility to take a donation then from someone towards a park?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the amount of parkland dedication that we are able to require is prescribed within the Planning Act. Anything that's above and beyond that is not authorized. That was possible through the previous zoning provisions, which no longer exist. So there is no legal mechanism for council to require additional parkland dedication. The amount is prescribed within our parkland dedication policy as well as within the Planning Act.
I appreciate that. Perhaps that could even be a goodwill gesture, though.
Councillor Stretch.
Thank you. This is a question to staff. Can you help me understand what would cause you not to recommend a planning initiative forward?
Sorry, Councillor, can you please repeat that last part? I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering what would be some of the things that would cause you not to recommend a planning application coming forward? Thank you.
Through the chair, that's an interesting, I've never been asked that question before. I guess it would be a situation where it doesn't meet the policies of our official plan or of the province, or we feel it's bad design, those would be sort of, or it's unserviceable, or the servicing couldn't handle the density. I mean, those are, but there's usually an engineering solution for that type of thing. Those would be typically the kinds of things that would cause us not to recommend approval.
If I could just build further on what my colleague said. So our role as planners here at the City of Kitchener is to bring forward recommendations which are a balance of interests, which are in the public interest. So we review this development application in accordance with provincial guidelines and procedures and policies, the regional official plan, our own official plan, and then council endorsed documents which guide development, and that includes things like the zoning bylaw as well as the urban design manual. In this case, as with most planning applications, the recommendation is typically a revision to something we received, where we have tried to balance interests and bring forward our very best recommendation that will achieve the planning outcomes and which are required to deliver. So in this case, we are required to provide housing and ensure that there's adequate housing supply for our community. Mr. Bateman has worked with the developer for the last several months looking at revisions, making changes to where the built form would be located to comply more with our urban design manual, to have on-site amenities, to have increased tree savings areas. These are all comments that we heard from the community. They're important comments. We may not agree with the way that they've been fully addressed in the planning report, but these are all the considerations that we bring forward. Ultimately, it's council's decision on the applications, but it is our role to ensure that all of our recommendations are in the best public interest. And although it's not a popular thing to say in this council, the public interest isn't always represented by the people who are in the council chambers. We have to think about people that are moving to our community and people who don't even know they're moving here yet.
Thank you. And my other question is just for Councillor Deneau. Are you deferring to the 29th? Do you have a date? So
29th.
April 29th. Okay. Okay. I think that's it.
Mayor Vanovich. I can't seem to activate you. Maybe that's, no, not that many.
There you go.
There you go.
Thanks. And well, and if it's the 29th, I guess my question is less of a concern. But just to be clear, the date for appealing for non-decision is after May the 9th. But is this application under new rules or old rules?
It's the same date. Through you, Chair, 120 days is the refund as well as the right of appeal, 120 days.
But we are under the new rules?
Yes.
Okay. That was the question. I mean, I was less concerned about, yeah, what the main issue is, when do we need to have it done by in terms of the new rules, so that was the application, and you're saying it's May the 9th. Okay, thanks.
So that's Monday's the last meeting we have prior to
Clarification
Yes,
question?
Just a clarification, that new rules meaning rebate, is the rebate of the fees, that's already been implemented? That they cannot get the rebate if we go past the deadline?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are still within the 120 days. So there is no right of appeal for non-decision, and there is no obligation to refund fees. As of May 9th, the
I understand that. Sorry, I'm just clarifying. So the province came up with a new direction recently that they're going to take back that waiving of the fees, and that's not implemented yet, was my understanding.
It's only draft available on ERO for comments right now.
So if we go past May 9th, we have to refund fees. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so that seems to be the questions of the committee. I have a few of my own. Just before I start off, just to reiterate some of the comments or more specifics that are being looked at by the committee to staff as direction, which hopefully there's some fruitful conversation that can come out of it. One of which is fire truck exit, so the exit off of Brentwood, which at 136 Brentwood, right? Yeah, in the report we have it written as 135. We may need to amend that. So 136 Brentwood for it to be fire exit only, as opposed to a secondary exit, vehicular exit for the residents in the development. The other point made was lowering the height, so potentially still having the raised basement for allowing extra light coming in, but instead of 9 feet per floor, consider looking at 8 feet per floor, and that may end up being 12 meters or 11.75 meters, but not the 12.5 that's being sought right now. But that's some clarification that can be brought back as part of the next week's meeting as to exactly what that height adjustment would be. The other is, albeit not my preferred choice, because I think we have to be respectful though to the new residents, as said by Mr. Stevenson, not just the impact in the neighborhood, is reducing the height, so not having a raised basement at all. So on grade and then above 3 stories. But again, that's something that, yes. Yeah, it was Councillor Chapman that had said that. Perhaps not necessarily having the raised basement. That's a conversation you can explore, but again, that's not my preferred choice, though. I think the adjustments within the floor is probably what makes more sense. The other is upgraded to fencing, making sure that compatibility in the neighborhood is consistent with some form of fencing that's there, or at the very least repurposing or reutilization of some parts of the fencing that currently exists. And I'll come to my question also, 136 Brentwood. Do you have a point of clarification or later on? Oh, yes. Rental replacement plan, if that meets our, I'm sorry, just one second. If that meets the current rental replacement bylaw, or a conversation with the proponent and seeing what conversation they can have with the current tenants and any concessions or any efforts can be made for, consideration of, helping with their moving costs or a way for them to come back in future development form. Is there a point of clarification question? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Michaud.
I asked, requested for less units, suggested of less units so that vehicles could get in and turn around in the development if you're going to close off that piece of Brentwood only for emergency. Would that be that you're taking the basement units away? Is that less units? Or you're not taking the basement units away?
Well, we're going into a little bit of semantics of questions about the FSR, right? So I think staff did hear that there's some ask of having lesser units than what's being sought right now.
Okay, you didn't say that.
And that can be either through, but we have to be cognizant. We don't know exactly what the FSR is going to look like. What staff have said, if it's not a raised basement, then the basement area does not get calculated as part of FSR. In which case they might meet the intended FSR for the number of units that they're requesting. So they don't need to reduce the number of units if they just reduce the basement height.
But then they'd still be back to where they were at the beginning of this conversation, where trucks can't go in and turn around.
So that's based on site. They can look at the site exactly and seeing how the truck can turn within the site itself. So I don't know the site logistics, but that's what they'll look at, seeing if it's one exit only, if it's secondary exit for fire trucks only, or if there's ability within the site for the truck radius to turn. I think what Mr. Stevenson has said is there may be enough space there, but there would be loss of parking spaces, because you would still need to have asphalted area for the truck to turn around, but you're going to lose parking. And having a secondary route allows for a little bit more efficient turnaround from the site as opposed to turning within the site itself. But that's something that staff will look at and seeing, does the developer want to take a look at reducing the number of units, reducing the number of parking, or potentially...
Yes, that's what I wanted in there. Thank you.
But that's a conversation that they will have. Councillor Schneider, point of clarification?
No, there's just another comment about fire hydrants being inside the development. I think that might help with the fire issues, and as Mr. Stevens has said, the ability to have the hose reach the 3rd floor. So that can be discussed as well.
Okay, staff are taking note of that. Okay, so finally to my point, on Brentwood, the site is 50 feet wide, or I think 16 meters, 15 meters, sorry, 15 meters. Perhaps have a conversation with the proponent if they want to do a low-rise a home if a secondary exit is not required for a fire truck, in which case it allows for conformity and consistency on Brentwood. The lot is big enough that they could still have a 9-meter for a lot, as well as a 3-meter right-of-way for the servicing that would be required. What I'm trying to say is I think there may be adequate space where they could meet their goal of having servicing connection from Brentwood, while still at the same time maybe being able to reconstruct a residence so that, again, it just allows for full consistency and meets the concerns of the residents. And on top of it, the fact that there may be ability for the developer to have a detached constructed home, which only increases their pro forma. Perhaps they could have some ability to have an affordable housing unit or two. That's part of the conversation that we can make. Okay, I'll look to the committee and seeing if I missed anything. It doesn't seem that way. It's a long list. We'll leave it to staff. The item has been referred. Councillor Stretch.
As a comments, can I say?
It's being referred, but go ahead, because it's your ward, but go ahead if you want to make some comments.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to to thank the community for coming out. I know they are a very committed community and very welcoming and active with your community association, and I know just walking in the neighborhood and hearing from many of you, I think it is reasonable for them to believe that they will see development in this space here, and I think knowing this community that they will do their best to make sure that the community fits. And I just want to thank you for coming in and voicing your concerns so well through all the different avenues that you've been able to, and just to hold that expectation for that when people move into your community, you continue to be inclusive and welcoming, giving other people the chance to be part of it.
I think that's an important message to outline. With that, all those in favor for the referral to April 29th? Those opposed? And that carries. All right. So again, for those in the audience, no decision was made. The committee has referred this item to April 29th, allowing time for our staff and the developer to have conversation regarding the array of input and questions raised by the committee, and at that point, that will be brought back on April 29th. And that is the day that it would be ratified as well, because it'll be a council meeting. Okay? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you. Yes, if you want to appear as a delegate, for new information only. Yeah.